Mr. Supply Chain here with my good friend Joe Tillman. Joe and I were talking this morning, Saturday morning, but supply chain folks were all trying to figure out what's happening around coronavirus and how we keep the supply chain moving. One of the things that came up as Joe and I were talking is we started having a really serious conversation about what's happening as companies are having to adapt, right? And so there are companies that are changing the products that they're manufacturing, changing the components that they're using for some of the products, changing the markets that they're selling into, and changing some of the transportation modes to try to get things out there faster and meet the needs of their customers and the consumers. But in the process of that, there's the potential for creating some real problems if people don't understand the impact that those changes have in terms of safety and regulations. And as Joe and I were talking, we realized we really needed to share that conversation with the broader community to get people thinking about it and to help all of you do the right things to help keep the supply chain moving so that we don't end up with catastrophes happening in the middle of this crisis. So, Joe, with that as a setup, what are some of the things that you think, are concerns? What are the questions that you're getting from your clients about how to adapt and survive and meet their customers' needs in these crazy times?
Yeah, Daniel, I think that's a great question. And like you brought up already, you've got a lot of manufacturers that are changing out the products themselves that they're manufacturing. And you also have shippers, distributors, and wholesalers that are having to ship products that they may not have had to ship before by using different modes of transport. So, hey, we want to ship by highway or we're shipping by ocean, but now those aren't possibilities for us because ports are closing. You've got trucking issues that are taking place now with getting with more emphasis placed on grocery type supplies, getting the grocery stores restocked. And then just changing from, using, say, hey, truckload transportation going down to either LTL, so less than truckload, or even having to select a parcel because we can't ship pallets. We're having to ship individual packages now. And there's a lot of different things that the hazmat regulations will impact if we are making those types of changes. Daniel and I were just talking a minute ago about a client that, called me and said, hey, my freight forwarder is saying I need to fill out a shipper's declaration. Well, a shipper's declaration is a very specific document for air transport. And as I had to explain to them, you haven't been trained for air transportation. And when you sign that document, you're stating it meets the air requirements. And if you haven't met those air requirements, either through the technical instructions from ICAO or the IATA DGR, you can't ship it because then you are in breach of national law, which is federal law here in the United States. So taking that time to identify what is it that we're shipping and what has changed. You have distilleries and manufacturers of adult beverages like whiskey and bourbon that have alcohol on hand. These are alcoholic beverages, and depending on the percent concentration of alcohol in those beverages, they're not ever going to meet the defining criteria for it being considered a flammable liquid, a class 3 flammable liquid. But now they're switching over to manufacturing isopropanol for hand sanitizer, and hand sanitizers, depending on the percent concentration, are hazardous materials. So they're having to deal with that. They may not even have the product, the packaging for the product that they need to ship it in. Now, there's exceptions that they could use, but again, you have to have that knowledge and you have to know, well, what are those exceptions that I can use and how does that differ between the modes of transport? Well, I may not be able to ship this product highway. There's distilleries in Oregon trying to ship out and got approvals to ship out hand sanitizers that they've been manufacturing. They may want to get it out much quicker, more rapidly. There are different things between air and road transport that you have to take into account. And are you certified? Have you been trained to be able to certify that that document and those products have been prepared according to the regulations? You don't want what happened to Amazon in 2016 with a $350,000 fine, but also making this crisis worsen into a catastrophe when they come in contact with a leaking product that's actually a corrosive material, even though it wasn't designated, defined, marked, labeled, or prepared as a corrosive material. Some other things that we have to think about as well is if I'm moving from shipping pallets or full truckloads to less than truckload transportation. And those carriers, or if I'm going to a parcel carrier such as FedEx or UPS, am I certified and set up with those parcel carriers to ship hazardous materials? If I'm not, then I can't use them. So I'm going to have to pay to put a fiberboard box or a cardboard box on a pallet, shrink wrapped, stretch wrapped on the pallet, and ship it less than truckload, taking up valuable space in that less than truckload carrier what they have. If I'm shipping a pallet in less than truckload is great for shippers if you are shipping in amounts less than 19,000 pounds approximately, so less than 20,000 pounds. That's a perfect mode for you to use. It is totally applicable, but you need to work with the carrier. And if you've never used that carrier before, you need to make sure that you meet all of their requirements that they have, because they can have more specific requirements in place in order to transport a particular hazardous material or product.
So Joe, a couple of things, just to make sure that we're covering the hot spots. If folks are, dealing with hazardous materials, examples of hazardous material, obviously we're talking about alcohol, lithium batteries, and any device that has lithium batteries in it.
Yep.
What else are, some common hazardous materials that you think people may be seeing for the first time now that aren't used to dealing with those?
Right. Well, I think bleach is a big one, and bleach is a great product to use for disinfecting. You can use, a third of a cup of bleach to a cup to a gallon of water, and that makes a great disinfectant. But it depends on the bleach itself and how much sodium hypochlorite is in that. The Pipeline Hazardous Materials Safety Administration, through their interpretations that they've issued over the years, has said that 5.25% sodium hypochlorite in a solution is not, or less, is not regulated as a hazardous material. But if you are shipping a product that has more than that, it is now a hazardous material under the regulations. So germicidal bleach.
It's a big deal for folks that are shipping, but even frankly, I can anticipate a lot of folks working in warehousing, transportation, distribution, and even retail stores now are going to be consuming bleach, which means they're storing bleach, they're maintaining inventory where they may never have dealt with that before. And so, we need to be thinking about, okay, this
Absolutely.
is a hazardous material, we need to handle it correctly. So if you're working with new materials, either, as things that are going into your products, things that you're making, things that you're shipping out, or things that you're using in your process, you got to ask the question, are there hazardous materials here? Do I know, and do I have the right processes in place to be compliant and to handle them safely? And then the second is, if you're changing modes of transportation, the regulations are different across different modes for good reasons. And just because, it's an emergency and it's a crisis doesn't mean that those rules and regulations don't apply, and doesn't mean that those dangers don't exist for everybody in the supply chain. So
Absolutely.
Joe, you are my go-to guy for all of these hazardous materials issues. If anybody out there needs help, I know you said that you can reach out to them. Where do they find you, and what's the best way to reach you?
Best way to reach me is at joe@tsquaredlogistics.com. Call me directly anytime, 912-388-1987. Or you can also find me on Twitter at PFMGMT. Happy to do it anyway. Or connect with me on LinkedIn.
I was going to say, I always find you on LinkedIn and Twitter, but I've got you on speed dial on the cell phone for exactly this kind of stuff. Joe,
Awesome.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate you sharing your expertise and letting folks know, be thinking about this, and if they need help, you're there to help them. Thanks
Absolutely.
a lot.
Happy to. Thank you, Daniel.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.